Good afternoon, my faithful listeners, and thank you for tuning in to the Post-Apocalyptic News Radio, your only source for the latest goings-on in a little corner of the post-apocalyptic wasteland we call home. Today is Sunday, the 22nd of June, and we're live at the bottom of the hour with more of the latest. In today's broadcast, under duress, I will be covering the weather, but I will also be covering the continuing situation with the MCR and the studio, an interesting new recipe for all the kitchens in the wasteland, and, of course, our afternoon puzzler. Before anything, I want to remind you of yesterday's puzzler, the answer to which will be revealed at the end of today's broadcast. The question was, why was the dog ceaselessly attacked by ducks at the pond? Think about it, and stay tuned for the answer. Now it's time to move on into our least useful segment, the weather. Fear not, my faithful listeners, for if you miss this segment, everything I say is readily available via your window and senses. The rains have begun to pick up in strength, though are still weaker now than they were when they began. It's expected that the downpour will continue to increase in intensity through the early week, but should clear up entirely by the week's end. The heavier rain is hampering the humidity, with only 5% today, and cooling us down to a temperature range no higher than 24 degrees Celsius and no lower than 21. Moderate winds are expected for the duration of this evening and the early morning of tomorrow. With the constant rains and wind, much of the land has become waterlogged. We've discussed this previously in regards to the muck pits. However, we must warn those who reside around the mountains and large hills of our wasteland that there now lies the opportunity for mudslides. It is the recommendation of the studio that these areas be evacuated until further notice, and that extreme caution be used in these areas. Moving on, it's time for our daily siege report. The MCR invaded and took control of our wasteland not long ago, but the studio's defenses held. Now, a bitter standoff between your home for music and news and a society of brutes. You may recall our fine guests beyond the studio's walls, the MCR's very own lame mules. They've kept us under siege for quite some time now, and are not necessarily the friendliest sort. Fortunately for us, however, it seems the ground on which they've built themselves upon has become littered with muck pits. Indeed, we've witnessed men, ends, tents, and supplies all fall entrapped to these hazards. In fact, I personally witnessed Centurion Octavian's tent begin to falter. It began to list as if a ship, before it began to sink. Though not entirely submerged, it is entrapped there, and cannot be salvaged at this time. Regrettably, the good Centurion was not within the shelter at the time. That concludes today's MCR update here at the studio, and brings us to a classic segment I'm certain everyone missed. Let's talk survival. More accurately, let's talk survival cooking. More specifically, let's talk quality survival culinary. Most of us haven't had a decent meal since the world ended, living off the scraps of the world past, or risking contaminated meat hunted from our new furry friends. Often bland or bitter, these meals leave us wanting. However, thanks to a kind soul traveling the wastes, I know of few things you can do to better your meals. Cheese. I'm certain I need not explain cheese to you. In the world that was, it was a staple in the diets of men from the ancient world to the modern world. But with the loss of dairy production in an industrial scale, distribution networks, and general knowledge, most cheese lovers have been left wanting. Now, however, there's a solution that should return this dietary staple to us once more. Though the method I should describe may be disturbing to some viewers, I encourage those with poor stomachs, or fear of blood, to tune out for just a moment. There is a beast in our wasteland, the Saldav. It is a creature no larger than a goat that consumes any flora it encounters without hesitation. Its blood has a unique quality to it. It will in all cases form balls no larger than a quarter meter in diameter as they coagulate. This effect occurs whether on the wound the Saldav has suffered or independent of the creature. The ball, which is referred to as a clove, forms a membrane. Unlike the blood you or I possess, the Saldav's blood, once formed into a clove, will not entirely solidify. The membrane of the clove is flexible, can stretch, and is as durable as any stone. However, it is not invulnerable, and can be pierced with tools such as syringes. If this is done, one need only introduce the sap of a minor thorn to the clove. After some time, usually half a day, the clove will alter to a substance not dissimilar from Gruyere in texture and taste. It melts with some ease and can be sliced without any issue. So go out, my cheese-loving listeners, create your fondue and sandwiches, your cakes and charcuterie, and let us all enjoy once more this dietary staple. But I'm afraid that's going to be all the time we have for today. It's about time for the evening radio music. Before we go, however, I should like to leave you with the afternoon puzzler. Did you discover yesterday's answer? I'll remind you the question was, why was the dog ceaselessly attacked by ducks at the pond? The answer, he was a pure-bred dog. Congratulations to anyone who got that one. Today's puzzler is as follows. What occurred when a cheese factory exploded in France? Think about it, and tune in again tomorrow for the answer. But for now, I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Until next time, I wish you all the very best. And, if you're truly out there, good luck.